A planned immigration operation in the Bay Area has been called off. More than 100 federal agents were sent to the Coast Guard base in Alameda. It was seen as a precursor to National Guard troops being sent to San Francisco. But President Donald Trump called that off late this week, saying the White House will continue to monitor the city. To dive into this issue at our reporter roundtable today, we have Sophia Bollag with the San Francisco Chronicle, Blake Jones with Politico, and Jeanne Kuang with Cal Matters. Thank you all three for joining us.
Thanks for having us.
Sophia, I want to start with you. We know Mayor Daniel Lurie of San Francisco had a productive conversation that apparently helped sway the president to go in this direction. But is there anything else that could have pushed the president to do this?
Yeah, so one thing that the president actually mentioned, he posted about this conversation that he had with Lurie on his social media website, Truth Social. And he also mentioned that he had had conversations with some tech leaders in San Francisco. And I think a couple of other factors that might be at play here. One is that Lurie has been really careful during his tenure as San Francisco mayor not to antagonize the president. He's really gone out of his way not to mention the president really at all, which has been in pretty stark contrast with other Democratic officials, including, for example, Barbara Lee, who is the mayor of Oakland, very close to San Francisco. She's been very critical. Another thing that the president did not mention in his Truth Social post, I do not know if this was on his mind, but if he had, called for a big surge in immigration enforcement and had a lot of federal agents on the ground, it could have played into this argument that Gavin Newsom has been making about Prop 50, and this election that's coming up, that the president is trying to interfere. That's what the governor keeps saying. And if you have a bunch of federal agents in California, maybe that plays into the governor's messaging.
Sure, and coupled with Lurie's non-combative stance, Blake, I mean, that's a contrast from several other Democratic leaders in this state. I mean, how likely do you see other Democrats taking a cue from Lurie, not poking the bear, in essence, with President Donald Trump?
I'm not sure I see a lot of Democrats in California following this mold. I mean, we've already seen that Los Angeles Mayor Karen Bass took a very different approach when the National Guard was deployed to her city. She was extremely pointed in her criticisms of the president at the time. And, we've also seen Governor Gavin Newsom has not let up in his criticism whatsoever. In a recent piece that some of my colleagues worked on, Newsom's communications advisor, Bob Saladay, talked about the idea of this obsession among Democrats that they might be able to kind of kiss up to Trump. And the governor's administration just doesn't believe that that is an effective way to deal with him.
And Jeanne, sticking with that, I mean, Governor Newsom, do you see him changing his approach to the president at any point?
I think in the short term, I don't see that really happening. I mean, he's in fight mode right now. We saw the way that he tried to play nice with the president at the beginning of this year, at the start of the presidency. And it's only deteriorated since then, starting, in June when immigration raids were rattling Los Angeles. At that point, Newsom started really getting back into that fighting spirit. He was, begging, threatening to get arrested by the federal administration. And now that Prop 50 is on the ballot, I'm really glad Sophia brought that up. I think that is a way for him to give voters something actionable to fight back against the Trump administration. And so I think everything is kind of framed around that right now. You saw him this week as the deployment of the federal agents was still imminent. He was out there saying, this is a way to intimidate people going into the election. He wasn't even saying it was necessarily about immigration enforcement. So I think I don't see him backing down at the moment. I think he's really taken this fighting stance in stride, and I think that's his kind of way forward for now.
Whoever wants to take this, we have about a minute left, but I do want to talk about the news in San Francisco also this week that State Senator Scott Weiner, one who is known for provoking the president publicly, announced that he's running for Nancy Pelosi's seat. What do you make of this in the city, Blake?
Yeah, I mean, this is a long time coming. Senator Weiner has been preparing for this for many years, but it does show that some of the, maybe momentum that younger Democrats are feeling to oust older incumbents has finally come to a head. And this has been a pretty momentous year for Senator Weiner. He's passed some major housing legislation, and as other primary challengers were getting into the race, I think that nudged him in the direction of finally moving and doing something he previously said he wouldn't do, which is potentially running against Nancy Pelosi, although she hasn't announced her plans for 2026.
Right. Okay. Jeannie, Sophia Bollag, we appreciate you all so much for being here. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.